feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college ruled.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. It's Dom and Chris here, and before we begin today, just a little housekeeping here at the very beginning. We're recording live from Engle Studio, so if anybody here in the Tucson area has any recording needs, come to Engle Studio here in downtown Tucson.
Yeah.
Also, please give us a like, follow, and subscribe on all our social medias outlets. We need to pump those numbers up. Keep producing this quality content for you, the fans. And if you have any suggestions, let us know, okay? As far as athletes you want to see covered, whether or not I should do this with a shirt on, it's awesome, okay?
Maybe some drunk episodes. Who knows?
Some drunk sports experience episodes.
I'm just saying,
could be interesting.
So who we got today?
Today we got someone you described perfectly as Mr. All-Purpose. We talk about men of their time a lot on this podcast, Chris, and this was a man before his time, like those dinosaurs in Land Before Time.
Also a man that ripped the heart out of a certain young gentleman.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Bringing it up too early. He's already getting heated.
We're at the beginning. We're talking, of course, today about arguably the greatest return man of the 1990s and a great running back and receiver. Pretty much do everything. Eric Metcalf.
Yeah, Eric Metcalf. Get it started,
All
man.
right. Born January 23rd, 1968 in Seattle, Washington. He's got some NFL bloodlines. Mm-hmm. His dad was a three-time Pro Bowler, running back as well, Terry Metcalf, and both played very similar styles. They were quick, they were shifty, and his dad also, much like Eric, had great hands. And his dad was on those famous St. Louis Cardinals teams, not baseball, that won 2 division titles in the 70s with Jim Hart and Dan Deerdorf. I believe it was Don Coryell was their head coach, so he kind of knew how to use his dad pretty well.
And he was also, one year, he led the NFL, or led the league in all-purpose yards, just to put it in perspective as to how much these two were similar.
Yeah, if his dad played on another team in the 70s, it'd probably be a bigger name. But he ends up retiring in 1981 with the Redskins, and then Redskins, I'm sorry. And Eric grew up in the Washington, D.C. area.
Yes.
Gets to high school at Bishop Dennis J. O'Connell High in Arlington County, Virginia, and was a star on the football field and on the track and field.
That was something that you see with the guys who are unbelievably fast, and he really was. Like, if track and field had like a real future, he probably would have went into track and field.
Oh yeah, like if he wasn't just awesome at football too, where you can make lots of money.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Absolutely. He set records in the long jump, triple jump, 100-yard, 200-yard, 400-yard dashes, and still has the seventh longest indoor long jump in high school history with 7.75 meters. So you're thinking, sky's the limit for this guy as far as where he wants to go to college.
Yeah, he's just a amazing athlete coming out of high school.
Yeah, and he has all the requisite athletic skills to go to a big-time program, and he chooses the University of Texas because he not only gets to play football, he gets to compete in track and field as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And as far as his, you want to do his track career first? Or
do the...
Okay. So was just an absolute stud on their track team. Set the school record for long jumps, won the NCAA titles in the long jump in 86 and 88, was the Southwestern Conference champion in the long jump in 86 and 87, and was a 5-time All-American and competed in the 88 Olympic trials and finished 8th overall.
Finished 8th, yeah, I saw that. I thought it was interesting that he really was on that international Olympic scale of track and field where he probably could have competed at some point in the Olympics.
It's almost like Vince Carter with volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about a lot of these guys, it's like, oh, they're good in all these things, but they're really good in one thing.
Yep.
He was really good in 2 things.
Yes, definitely.
As far as his football career, 85 and 86 has a combined 668 rush yards and 5 touchdowns. Yeah, 50 catches for 823 yards and 5 touchdowns, and was their main punt returner, which we'll discuss later about his returning prowess.
I was just going to say, that's the thing that really he develops later on, is he becomes like almost like a commodity, almost like a thing that other teams are like, oh, wow, he does that in addition.
Yeah, like, oh, well, that saves us a roster spot.
Yes, exactly.
And as far as his punt return and kick return abilities, anytime you can get this guy in the open field, hold your breath, because he can take it the distance and really just destroy you. 87 was a second-team All-American, Southwestern Conference Player of the Year, 1,161 rush yards, 10 touchdowns, 234 receiving yards, and 324 punt return yards and a touchdown. So you're thinking everything's going to fall into place, and an 88 has a decent season, 932 rush yards, 8 touchdowns, and 333 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's entering the 89 NFL draft, which how do we keep coming back to this,
I was just
Chris?
going to say, the 89 draft has so many players that have so much impact over the 90s. It's crazy how many players come out of this 89 draft.
We've done Aikman, we've done Derek Thomas, and we've done the draft itself.
The draft itself, yeah.
So with the 13th overall pick, and the thing about Metcalf is, much like his dad, he's kind of a smaller guy at 5'9", 180 pounds. Not like teeny tiny, but like not big by NFL standards.
Well, he's not impressing you on his size.
Yeah.
Ever. And he's a little undersized.
Undersized.
Which
That's a good way of putting it.
in NFL, that's not the worst thing, but it's something that some people are like, well, that's,
Well, it's the worst thing kind of in this era, because outside of maybe San Francisco and Cincinnati, everybody's run first. And this is pre-Mike Shanahan, where you don't have a backfield by committee. Everyone has a 25-plus carries bell cow on their team as a running back. So some teams kind of shy away from him, but he was such an amazing athlete as far as his shiftiness, his quickness, and his speed, that he's taken 13th overall by the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And in 1989, the Browns are actually very good. They win the AFC Central. Eric has a career highs in rush yards, carries, and touchdowns on the ground, 633 and 6 touchdowns on 187 carries. And this is where you kind of start seeing him as a Swiss Army knife. 54 catches and 4 touchdowns this year, which is pretty great, and 718 kick return yards as well. And they go all the way to the AFC title game, including a kick return in the divisional round for a touchdown against the Bills, and play the Denver Broncos. And as we described in our Three Amigos episode, when the Broncos and Browns meet in the playoffs, it usually only goes one way for Cleveland.
Well, I thought it was interesting that his rookie season was this impactful for this Browns team that, classically is horrible. But that's the thing that I found interesting, was he was almost too proficient at too many positions. He wasn't good enough at just one spot, and he was almost kind of blanketed too much.
As a running back, he was like jack of all trades, master of none, but he was the master of punt and kick returns.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one that really he could hang his hat on.
Exactly. And, you're obviously going to try and feed him the ball. By 1990, the team bottoms out at 3-13. And then, let's see, in
91, I think they bring in Belichick.
Yeah,
right?
91 is when they bring in Grumbledore, and the problem is they're starting to acquire more backfield talent with Joe Morris and Leroy Horde. So Eric's touches on offense are kind of going down a little bit, and Belichick doesn't know how to use them, because the NFL really hasn't seen a player like this since probably his dad.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think that Belichick, who is so praised for his coaching prowess, literally is just like, yeah, I don't know what to do with you, man. You can take those kick returns, but so literally after 89 being a great season, 90 being a little bit down, 91, 92, he really is not used as much.
Yeah, but he's leading the NFL in kick return yards.
That's where
he's taken a couple to the house on kicks. He's taken one apiece this season on punts. He had 86 catches for 746 yards and a touchdown. And then in 92, the Browns draft Tommy Vardell to be their, centerpiece in the backfield. So you start seeing his rushing yards numbers decline, but him just absolutely destroying people on special teams. 92, 47 catches, 614 yards, and 5 touchdowns, led the NFL in punt returns, and had 429 yards and a touchdown. And this is when Cleveland's finally starting to
Come back a little.
Yeah, Belichick and then guys like Saban and Kirk Ferentz and stuff. The staff is there. They're just trying to rebuild of the mess that they inherited.
Yes.
So then we get to 1993, where Eric pretty much becomes Mr. All-Pro as far as special teams. It's a super competitive. He's actually first-team All-Pro. 611 rush yards, a touchdown, 65 catches, and a couple of touchdowns. But as a punt returner, he had 464 yards and a league-leading 2 touchdowns.
That is so crazy to think that you get 2 TDs from punt returns and that much yardage.
Yeah.
That's the thing, that he was putting them in such great field position all the time. It's something that I feel like can't really be expressed on the stat sheet as much. Like that, those yards are so important to like literally push you
Flip
from
the field.
Yes. To flip the field, literally push you from your end to their end.
Well, and he was he was a very tough guy, but what I liked so much and what I didn't so much is when he would return kicks and punts, he wasn't one of those guys that danced.
No.
He would dance to create space, but he would identify where the lane was, make the one cut, and then just go.
I'll tell you what, he would find those middle lanes that would open up. He wouldn't just go all the way on the outside and be like, you got me.
Those would be his punt returns where if you had that picket fence set up.
Yeah.
But on the kick returns, it'd be like, no, this is where the blockers are. This is where I'm supposed to go, and I'll make my way through it. So I mentioned he had 2 punt return touchdowns in 1993, and it's important because they both happened in the same fucking game. October 24th, 1993, the 4-2 Browns are playing the 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers, and they jump out to a 14-0 lead, which the Steelers tie at halftime, and then eventually take a 23-21 lead in the fourth quarter. But in that 14-0 burst, after a long touchdown pass to Michael, not the other Michael Jackson, but the football Michael Jackson, Metcalf has a 91-yard punt return. Now, on both of these, Mark Royals, the Steelers punter, completely outkicks his coverage, number one, which giving Metcalf any additional space is stupid to begin with. But
really
even
is.
punting to him to begin with is stupid.
But everything, that's what somebody said, was just like all of this was bad. He outkicked his coverage, so you're literally giving him the space to rev up that engine. And then somebody was just like, why are we kicking to him? Why are we doing this?
The 91-yard I can understand because not a lot of punt returners field the ball from their 10-yard line and inside of it. He just made one good move and got her. And he played this game, I think, with a bad hammy.
Yes,
too.
I heard that there was question whether or not the week leading up, whether or not he was going to play, and then he limped his way all the way to 2 returns. So there you go.
Yeah, and then late in the fourth quarter, the Steelers have a 4th down, so they're punting, probably from about their own 30 or so yard line. You're thinking, okay, it's late in the game. This defense has Greg Lloyd, Kevin Green, Carnell Lake, freaking just stacked with stars. Okay, probably the AFC's and maybe the NFL's best defense during this era. Why would you punt to Eric Metcalf? I would rather see Vinny Testaverde out there again.
Yeah.
I mean, that just makes absolutely no goddamn sense. And I remember being 6 and seeing the ball punted to him, and he makes one good move and is gone for 75 yards and the game-winning touchdown.
Well, to think of the special teams, because it's a lot of guys who are trying to make, offense or defense, and they're guys almost on the fringes. So they're definitely like right there. And I thought about this, where after this, I bet the Steelers coaching staff, it was like the Mighty Ducks.
Oh, they just cut everyone.
Nobody's making the team next year. Yeah. Nobody. Are you guys kidding?
Tower went full Jack Riley.
Yes.
Like, there is not a spot for any of you on this team. It was just when he cut, I think he broke a Deion Figures tackle near the end, so like probably near like the 20-yard line. And it was like that scene in The Simpsons where Bart had taped the Krusty special and Lisa yelled at Ralph Wiggum and he's like, "Hold up, Lisa, you can pinpoint the exact second his heart rips in half."
When the second one came back, that's what you... God.
First one, fool me once, shame on you. Second one, you can go fuck yourself. God. So they win the game 28-23. Unfortunately for Cleveland, they bottom out and I think finish the year 8-8 or 7-9.
Yes.
So they missed the playoffs. But 1994 is an incredible year. And up until a couple of years ago, was the last time that Cleveland made the playoffs and won a playoff game. And Eric Metcalf was a huge reason why. Particularly on special teams, he had 329 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, 47 catches for 436 yards and 3 touchdowns, but 2 punt return touchdowns, including a 92-yarder on opening day. So the Browns finish 11-5, and they make the playoffs. They beat the Patriots, and then get ass blasted by Pittsburgh in the divisional round, 29-0. And you're thinking, well, what's going to happen with Eric's career? Because that offseason, Cleveland went all in. They went all in. Leroy Horde had a great year, but they needed a wide receiver. And they went and signed Andre Bad Moon Rison out of the 89 draft class, by the way. And because they were strapped for cash. I don't know if you knew about this, but when they moved, Art Modell was so strapped for cash, he was almost tapped out. He was going to local Cleveland banks asking for money just to pay Rison's signing bonus.
Oh, yeah.
So what the Browns decide to do, because they have Rison, Eric's making a pretty good amount of money for the time, not for like right now in the NFL, but they need to get rid of that salary so they can get under the salary cap too. So what ends up happening is they flip-flop picks with the Atlanta Falcons in the first round. So Atlanta goes from, I think, like 9th into the late 20s, and then Cleveland goes from the late 20s to 9th. But they deal Eric Metcalf to Atlanta. And it was probably the best spot for him. As far as his skill set, as far as this era of the NFL to get the most use out of him on not special teams.
I was just going to say, like, it was a perfect fit for his style, especially back then where nobody was really using this little, like, dump and, no, give him 4 yards and he's going to run.
Yeah.
It's such a...
Bubble screens, what are those?
Yes, no, it was such a great move because Atlanta was just like, yeah, we'll take that. We'll take him. No, shh, we'll take him.
So at this juncture, the Falcons are coached by June Jones, who was the head coach at University of Hawaii when I went there. And one of his biggest claims to fame is he is one of the fathers of the run and shoot offense, which utilizes players like Eric Metcalf very well. Great route runners. You don't need to be Megatron. I mean, if you are, that's awesome. But as long as you're quick, you're shifty, you know what routes to run, and you have a high football IQ, you're going to fit just like a glove.
And the production post-catch, I think that's something that you have to...
It is.
For Metcalf, it is so huge on the Falcons. So he goes from being like a utility guy to being like, hey, we need you to be a running back today. And he's like, all right. To being like, no, you're going to be our wide receiver.
Yeah, because he switches positions full time. Now, I mean, granted, he's still carrying the ball, but you have Ironhead Hayward, but in that offense, you want your running back to be a larger, pounding individual because the defense is spread out, so the box has far fewer people in it.
Hey, man, power has a lot to do with it. So
Speed's the name of the game, Mac.
Just telling you, on wide receiver for the Falcons, speed was the name of the game, and Metcalf stepped right into it. But that's the thing is, like, if he had gone to the Cardinals, if he had gone to even a really good team in this, 93, 94, the Cowboys, I don't think he would have been. I think he would have just been their returner. You know what I mean?
Then
he
done
wouldn't
some spot duty, gadget plays, things like that.
Not like this for the Falcons. That's why when you look at this trade, you're like, oh, that was a great trade for him.
That was a fantastic trade for the Falcons and for Metcalf because this season, so they running 3 wide because they lost Rison, and everyone's thinking, what's going to happen? Well, you replaced him in the aggregate with Terrence Mathis, who I believe made a Pro Bowl, Bert Emanuel, who I not sure if he ever made a Pro Bowl, but he was a solid receiver for a long time. And then Eric Metcalf. And Metcalf, when you have Jeff George throwing laser beams at you, has an incredible season. Probably a career season for any wide receiver. 104 catches, 1,189 yards, 8 touchdowns, which was a career high. And he chipped in 133 and a touchdown on the ground. That's amazing.
I know.
That
Just
is
the all-purpose man, you know?
And then he had over 300 punt return yards and a touchdown. And the Falcons make the playoffs for the first time in 3 years and finish 9-7. And then they have to go up to Green Bay to play the old dong slinger. Mm-hmm. But Metcalf has a great play in this game. He starts off the scoring with a 65-yard touchdown. George was rolling out, and Metcalf adjusted his route. Nobody near him.
And just gone.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you're quarterbacked by Jeff George, bad things sometimes happen. So the following season, everyone's getting all stoked, everyone's getting excited, and Jeff George has that famous sideline implosion while they're playing Philadelphia, and the team around him is the team around him just implodes. Everybody's hurt. Metcalf's productivity drops. I think Bobby Hebert's their quarterback, and he's like in his late 30s at this point. 54 catches, 599 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But he's really still a special teams ace.
And just the Falcons went, and you see this happen where like a locker room will implode or like whatever, but the Falcons went from a playoff team to a team where they're like, oh, no, we're getting rid of everybody and we're rebuilding. But he had
over 1,000 kick return yards this year. I mean, you couldn't ask him.
Nobody was better at this point in the NFL at returning.
Yeah, so in 97, he leaves for San Diego in free agency because why not? You get to live in San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego.
Also known as the whale's vagina.
Oh, no. I believe the translation was lost by scholars over time.
Doesn't that mean Saint Diego? No. When in Rome.
Yes.
So 97, the Chargers are coming off back to 94, 95, they made the playoffs. 96, I think they finished 500, but in 97, they're bottoming out.
Yeah.
But Metcalf is still good. He's really good for a lot of bad teams.
Especially on special teams.
40 catches, 576 yards, 2 TDs. Makes the Pro Bowl again as a punt returner. 489 yards and 3 punt return touchdowns. There are guys who, if they get 3 in a career, they're considered elite.
Yes, it's kind of crazy to think he got 3 on a shitty team, too, because...
Yeah, it's not like they're forcing the other team to punt very often.
Yes, that's exactly... He's not getting as many... I wonder how many chances he got compared to other guys that season.
Oh, I bet you there was, like, games where they'd play, like, Kansas City or Denver, and they'd be, like, down by 30, and they'd be like, hey, just punt it to Metcalf. Let's see if...
Let's see what happens.
The points don't really matter outside of the gamblers. Let's just see what happens. I mean, go tackle him, but, you know... that year, 3 touchdowns. But before the 98 season begins, you're thinking he's going to come back to San Diego, but he doesn't. He's actually involved in one of the biggest, probably the most detrimental trades in San Diego Charger history. And leading into that draft, you wanted the first or the second spot to select Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. The Indianapolis Colts weren't moving at 1. The Arizona Cardinals were sitting at 2. And the Chargers said, we need to get Ryan Leaf.
Well, it's interesting because I remember leading up to this, it was thought of as a great move by San Diego to go get a franchise quarterback. And then they pick him up and they're like, oh, no. Peyton Manning was the gem.
No, I believe the answer to the question was Manning.
Yes. You picked up the woof.
Ooh, let's not get into that. But because they traded up and traded draft picks, Arizona wanted extra compensation, so the Chargers sent him Eric Metcalf. So you have a Metcalf on the Cardinals again.
Yeah.
Different city, happened a couple of times, but, you know, has a great year, though, for him. And much like his dad, and doesn't happen very often, he took the Cardinals to the playoffs. That year, 31 catches, 324 yards, 1,218 kick return yards, 295 punt return yards, helping flip the field for those Cardinals. Team goes 9-7, go to the playoffs, beat the Cowboys, oddly enough, and then, the 98 Vikings make quick work of them. But this is pretty much his last
hurrah.
productive season in the
Yeah.
end. But granted, he's played a decade in the league. So 99, he's with the Panthers, and then in 2000, he's with the Washington Redskins. Has a TD for him, which is pretty incredible, which I'll get into his statistics later, his final statistics, why it's important. 2002 with the Packers, but makes pretty much a minimal impact. But this is, year 14 for him. So
Yeah, the last 3 years, he was really sideline kind of like.
He
really,
was exclusively special teams.
I was just going to say, really reverted to what I think he would have been if he didn't go to the Falcons on that team in that middle of his career, which is just a special teams guy. So,
and that's the saddest part is that he was like 15 years too late for his skill set. I would say even more like 20.
Yeah.
In that
Screen passes.
Team like tunnels and bubbles and things like that. If teams could get, first of all, coming out of Texas, they would have been, all right, you're not a running back. You're exclusively a Z receiver, okay? We're going to make you one of our starting three. You're going to play outside, in motion, and in the slot, and we are just going to feed you the ball. And that was one of the things Belichick had talked about, how hard it was to get him the necessary touches to make an impact on offense. And that he would basically be Christian McCaffrey as not an inside runner as good as he is. I feel like that's what Metcalf would have morphed into, except he would be exclusively a receiver playing running back. Or a running back playing receiver. Yeah. So finishes his career, and this is kind of some awesome stats for him. 2,392 rush yards, 12 touchdowns. 541 catches for 5,572 receiving yards and 31 touchdowns. 5,813 kick return yards and 2 touchdowns. And 3,453 punt return yards and 10 touchdowns on punt returns.
On punt returns, yeah.
Up until Devin Hester broke it, who's arguably the best to ever do it, that was the most ever. That was the most ever. Is punt return numbers. And it's his total of 12 return touchdowns is third most of all time behind Brian Mitchell and Devin Hester. That's amazing. This guy had an incredible, like if you didn't watch football in the 90s, go back and watch this guy. It's amazing. He's playing like 2015 football in 1995, essentially. Like he would be the ultimate Swiss Army knife today.
Yes.
I feel like.
So many teams now would want him when back then there was a few that really wanted him and could use him.
And I am glad that he had that stint in Atlanta because it showed you what he could do when his skills were highlighted, not on special teams.
Yeah.
Because special teams, you can make your own, way. But I mean, as far as an offensive receiving threat, Chris Carter had 100 catches. Sterling Sharp had 100. Jerry Rice did. I mean, come on. But, so after his playing career, he coached football back in Seattle and teaches track.
Yeah. He's still huge into track. And, I mean, he was always really great at track. And I love the fact that he was one of the guys that was ahead of his time and, like, something that you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, he was a player that could be used today.
He haunted so many of my dreams, like, as a child, because of how good he was. So do yourself a favor, go watch some Eric Metcalf highlights on YouTube. They exist. They're awesome. Go and do it.